as ethical stewards of people's capital, it's tough to go, not you get all the deals, but like you said, we have to do stuff that we never thought we'd have to do. Like I'm cold calling owners and, all this stuff. So it's like, you have to do stuff that no one else is willing to do to get a deal.
That's the golden nugget right there.
This is the real estate investing experience. We get it. Real estate can be rough sometimes, and that's why we bring in the experts to talk about the experiences you won't hear anywhere else. With your hosts, John Cohen and Chris Grinzik.
Let's jump right into it because we got a great guest on today. Somebody I've known for a while, so really excited to have him on. So with that being said, Mike, thank you so much for joining us, bud.
Yeah, happy. It's an honor and a privilege to be on with you, Chris and John. I respect you guys both as in the real estate world with everything going on. And John, to your point, I thought you were going to say, man, it's already March. I was like, yeah, a year ago, the world was supposed to end and we're still here. So it's all relative.
Yeah, it's true, right? 1 year anniversary, basically.
Yeah, no one was supposed to pay rent a year ago today. And in the Southeast, everyone plus some paid rent. And now more New Yorkers are coming on down. So what a difference a year can make.
It is crazy. We just had this conversation last night and the exact same thing. A year ago today, my daughter just turned 2 in February, at the end of February. We had her 1 year birthday last year on March 3rd. And we were looking at it. I was like, that was D-Day, right? Like shortly after that, I think March 12th, we officially left the office. So it was like, it's over, what's happening, but we're all chugging along. So yeah, you nailed it. I mean, and I do remember at that point, I'm like, yeah, by the end of the summer, we'll be back to normal, right? That was everybody's conversation. And now it does not seem that that's the case, pending where you live, but the world's not over. That's for sure.
No, and multifamily definitely isn't over by any means.
100%.
Who would have thought valuations went up 30% at least?
Exactly.
It feels like, for sure. Just kick us off though, Mike, real quick. Just give everybody who doesn't know you a little bit about you, your background, what you do, all that.
Yeah. So currently the asset manager for Rand Partners. So we have 1,400 units under management in Tennessee and Kentucky. We do everything in-house, so vertically integrated with our property management team. My background, I was an accountant. I was good at math. My parents were teachers, like, hey, go do numbers and do accounting because you're great at it and everyone needs an accountant. And I realized even like my last day of before graduation, my professor was like, you're going to hate accounting. And I was like, what do you mean? And so going in it with 2 years for Big Four accounting, I quickly realized it was not for me. Went across the street in Detroit to work for Dan Gilbert, owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers and Quicken Loans, and saw a lot of what he was doing with his startups. But the crux was, I realized I was telling startups how to scale their business, but I wasn't doing that for my real estate. So I realized I needed the change of scenery. I loved that experience because it was working with like esports teams. So I know, Chris, we were talking on Facebook about esports, but I helped launch an esports team. Media production, technology, you name it, and just seeing what he was doing with Detroit. So kind of realized, hey, let's go into multifamily because it's just the scalable piece from single family. Pretty much did the 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift until I got the call to Rand Partners and been here almost it'll be 2 years and 3 months. So to John's point, time flies when you're having fun and in real estate. And and we're just focusing on building our portfolio, passive investors as well. And just, I think a little bit different spin of not being a capital raiser, but just really focusing on operations. Why I think, talking to you guys is always a blast because it's in the nitty gritty, but it's, helping others be successful operators, not capital raisers.
Awesome. And just a little bit further context. Are you also doing real estate on the side by yourself, or you're just doing everything with Rand?
Unless there's a smaller project I find or someone wants me to partner just on, I'm working on a deal. We should be hopefully closing today. It's like a small partnership for a deal in Greensboro. It's like a fractured condo deal, but, I'm open to opportunities, but for the most part, just focusing with Rand and, seeing what opportunities come because, you never know. In real estate, that's the beauty of it. It's you can be focused here, but, you get a couple opportunities that come out of left field and build a really good partnership. So, just open relationship.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think it's important though, because, you're doing your own investing on the side And I think one of the things I love about real estate investing and getting into even the working for somebody else side is there's very few businesses that you can replicate almost, A to Z in your job on the side for yourself to allow you to go out and, either build a business or, invest and, do real estate. Like you work for a hedge fund, it's not the same as going and picking your own stocks, right? You go work for Quicken Loans. It's very tough to turn around and, write your own mortgages for deals, right? But this is like almost like for like going out and doing the same thing. Yeah, you're not buying a 50, 100 unit deal on your own, but you can take all those same principles and theses and apply it to a single family home or a 5 unit or a 10 unit.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of real estate is literally the ability to share and be like on podcasts like this is, I think in real estate, in accounting, everyone was like, I got to be better than you so I can get my 4% raise instead of a 3% raise. And it's so competitive and secretive. But in real estate, everyone's like, here's my net worth. Here's where we do deals. Like everyone's so transparent. Like the first month I was like, it was mind blowing. It's like moving to the South from like Chicago. I was like, why is everyone talking to me? Like, it's just like everyone is so open about everything. I was like, oh, this is just what we do. And just realizing because, net worth is important for loans and the experience and the credibility. Because I think we've all seen just the Facebook, Instagram success stories that aren't really real. So it's just that open transparency that continues. So anyone in real estate and they're connecting with someone who isn't that transparent, it's a quick red flag when doing business with.
I say it all the time. I had a call yesterday with a younger kid. He's 23 years old. He's looking to do a deal in Charleston. Small world. I know everybody involved in the transaction. They've struggled, right? They have all the capital. They just can't find the right lending partner. So we started talking and I said, the best part about real estate is the collaboration that is available. Partners, enemies, friends, foes, whatever it is, employees, employers. Listen, there are obviously groups out there that don't want you going out and doing deals on your own and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you can't stop someone from doing that stuff. So the way we've looked at it and always have looked at it from day one is, let's be opportunistic with the right opportunities. It's as dumb as that may sound, but the collaboration behind it, whether we partner on a deal or not, or we look at a deal, and that's what I think is the best part about this business. It's not the money you can make, the upside, the tax benefit. That stuff's great. But the other side is you get to build great relationships and different partnerships. And if the deal doesn't work, you're not married to that person. It's one deal. That's it. And you could go on your merry way on the next one. So as long as you have that open dialogue and that communication, I don't think there's a better space for that openness, pending some other situations. But I love that component of it, of being flexible, that you're not tied down to, like you said, I got to hide this back because I don't want anyone to know it, right? At the end of the day, what we do, anyone can do this. It's not, we don't do anything different. We might do things a little different, but it's income and expenses and it's management and it's overseeing and it's not reinventing the wheel.
Exactly. And that's how all businesses are valued, right? And plus, like John, you could look at a deal and see this be the risk because it's an older product. Chris can look at it a different way. I can look at it a different way. So everyone has those risk profiles that, that's the beauty of it. I could look at it and say, like, this is a garbage deal. John could say it's a great deal, but like, it's just all these different perspectives that's like the beauty of it. It's kind of like art, but in the end, it's backed by numbers and real estate.
Yeah, no, that point is key. I remember someone told me early on, value add, everything's a value add deal nowadays, but at the end of the day, my definition of value add is if I see something that nobody sees and I know I can deliver it, that's value add, not taking a unit by doing a $5,000 upgrade and getting $100, right? Everybody sees that. There's nothing there, right? That is a value add. But when I look at a deal, if I see something that it could be that nobody's looking at, or if I know they're going to change the zoning so I know I can add more units, or if I know something that someone doesn't, that's the competitive advantage in real estate that you can share with people. But at the end of the day, if they're not as knowledgeable, that's your competitive advantage. And that's where, the value add component is. If you can see something that nobody does, or you see something and you can execute on it, that's where I look at a deal, you look at a deal, and Chris looks at a deal, and we all have 3 different numbers, right? It's not that it's not that we're looking at it saying something different, but my return threshold might be the highest, yours might be the lowest. Inevitably right there changes how we go about the deal, which is what makes it so special and so accommodating to so many different people.
Yeah, Yeah, I was going to say real quick on that. I think that's too why private equity coming into our space in the Southeast has made it exponentially harder because they have to make 4% and we don't, and we can't.
For sure.
Yeah. I know, one of the things that we talked about, in the last 12, 18 months before I, left was looking at more loan assumption deals, because we were talking about, so many people were like, oh, why would I do a loan assumption when I can borrow money at 3%? But for us, it was, hey, we can buy something at probably a higher cap rate than what you would free and clear. So we'll take a little bit less cash flow, pay a little bit more interest on debt to have a better cost basis in the future. I mean, one of the favorite deals that we ever bought, slightly biased because I brought it to the table, but was, Park at Blanding. It was, we bought it for like a 6 cap in a 5 cap market. And I mean, I just think that deal's going to crush it. Is it the highest cash flowing deal in the world? No, not by any means, but it was a really good cost basis, quote unquote, recession proof deal because it was a 70% LTV amortizing loan for the next 7 years. And, it's just in a really good submarket, in my opinion. So, I think those things are important too. Like one thing that I may see as a pro, somebody else may see as a con, right? Like I can fully understand why someone would be like, hey, I don't want to pay, if I can go get debt at 3%, why would I take on debt that's 4.5%? But for me, I think if you can find the right deal, there's opportunity there. So I think also too, everybody has certain reasons for getting into deals or looking at deals a certain way. They have outcomes and goals they're looking to accomplish, right? Like when I came down and bought these 2 smaller deals, my goal was to be able to come in and refi out at least 70% of our money in 2 to 3 years. So the biggest difference being where if we had looked at a similar deal for Toro, we typically don't renovate 100% of the units because we want to sell it and leave meat on the bones for somebody else. But for me, I said, screw that. Let's renovate everything, maximize value, because that's going to get us the most debt post renovation and get us the most amount of money back. So it's like what your goals and outcomes are also going to drive how you look at deals and what deals you see as, valuable and worth your time too.
No, I think even to your point, I think we talked about it a little bit on Clubhouse last night, but I think the syndication model, it's so hard because investors' expectations on returns hasn't really changed or gone down a little bit. Mm-hmm. But, you can't, if it's a 50 unit smaller deal that institutions aren't looking at, then attack it. Right. And so it's, I think just there's so much more media, podcasts, et cetera, on multifamily, and then people are getting frustrated and going to mobile homes. So I think the biggest thing that you said was having an investing thesis of, hey, I know long-term this is going to be great. Like you said, it doesn't cash flow perfect, but the appreciation on the back end is what makes this deal amazing. And I think just a lot of people are like, I need to make this percent, they're just very novice in it. And so it's just like, take the deal as a whole macro instead of like, it needs to hit this cash flow. Because after underwriting for pretty much 2 years, I've learned to underwrite less and just see if the story makes sense. And then obviously dive into the numbers because like John alluded to, it's not a value add because John bought it and can charge $50 more in rent. It's, that extra piece that you can really derive value from.
And then you said something super key that people should listen to and hear out. And what I say all the time, if there's no story that's going on, or there's nothing, if it's just, a guy bought it 2 years ago and he's slipping out of it, that's the first question we ask almost every broker, wholesaler, anyone that brings us a deal is, what's going on here? Like, what's the story? And if it sounds like there's nothing there, I would say it's not for us, right? We want to hear something that we can easily pin value to. And the story is more important than the numbers, because I'll teach you a trick about underwriting. Take any broker book, take any pro forma, and look at the T12 and throw the 4 cap on it. That's probably what the broker is going to tell you the whisper price is, right? So there's nothing hiding there. Take the T12 and throw a 6 cap on, and that's probably your offer. That's just life, right? So there's all these crazy models out there, and that's how we use. But what's more important than all of that is what's going on, right? Where is there any pain points here? And that story is going to paint your picture before you even waste time putting it into an elaborate model, which we get asked, well, what model do you use? I'm like, it doesn't matter. My model is a pen and paper that sits next to me because I know what they're going to want. I have to understand and dive into that story. And that story is going to tell you what's going on. And I think that more than anything is probably the biggest thing that we look for today is just, give me a story. Don't give me, I don't want the normal, he bought it 2 years ago, he hasn't done anything, the market's done great, and he wants a 4 cap now, right? Like I'm never going to buy that property because it's just not going to work for us.
And to your point, we're not saying don't underwrite stuff. We're saying we've underwrote so much that it's like, okay, it's like the Ray Dalio. You have the mental model of like, all right, I've seen this 100 times, so now I can apply this. So now here it is. So it's years of crafting that skill to see it. And especially with my background being a CPA, that's all I did was numbers. So it's just like, I can see on the income statement and fact check the story they're telling me was like finding the numbers. So I'm working with our analyst. He's like, hey, I'm like, remember our L10 where we had like the PMs had all this stuff and the plumbing issues in December? Well, here it is on the income statement. So it's just like crafting that, seeing the story and seeing the numbers and aligning the two up. So it can be super helpful.
Absolutely. And numbers are going to tell you part of the story, right? When you're looking at income statements and income and expenses, when you see spikes and dips and big numbers and small numbers, and you look at it over 12 months, those things should be in your back of your mind when you're talking to the seller, to the broker, whoever, and say, okay, what happened here? Why was repairs and maintenance 30% higher? Or you look at the broker's pro forma, which is bullshit, and then you go back and say, okay, well, why is insurance going down? Like, do you have an insurance broker that we don't know about? Like, you have to look at those numbers, but you also have to ask the question. So you're 100% right. The numbers will tell you the story, or at least tell you the questions that you should be asking. That's how you should go about underwriting. So yes, you're 100% right. I'm not telling people not to underwrite deals, but you have to underwrite a lot of them. And then you know the questions to ask, the things to look for. And those are the reasons that you ask the questions that paint that picture. And then when your picture's painted and you have your model all modeled out, do you move forward or not? And you need all of it to get there, but the story is the most important thing, whether it's the narrative on the deal or the narrative behind the changing in numbers is going to help educate you on making the right decision.
It's funny. I know when I just bought this last deal, if people ask, I had a bunch of people ask like, oh, what cap rate did you buy it at? And there's nothing wrong with that question, but I know immediately where that person is in their education or world for the most part, right? It's still a somewhat valid question, right? Just kind of seeing what the market is or whatever. God's honest truth is I have no fucking idea because I didn't get any operating expenses from the seller when I bought it. And, it's that, Mike, you were saying just like that timepiece of the last 5 years of going through so many deals, now operating a 16 unit for a few months that I was, able to put something on paper that made me feel comfortable. But at the end of the day, I also looked at like the worst case scenario and said like, okay, if I've got to spend $50,000, $60,000 a door because this thing is just a disaster, how are we going to shake out? And for me, it was like very close to breaking even if we had to absolutely gut the entire thing and strip it to the studs, which is almost never going to happen, right? And if something happened that, made it that way, hopefully the insurance that we have in place is going to cover that stuff. So it's not like, if I was so bad at my job that I missed that it just needed all new plumbing, electrical, windows, doors, roofs, ACs, water heaters. Like if I was so bad that I missed all that, I really think we should still break even. And then if anything ever happened, hopefully we have a good insurance broker and good insurance in place that stuff is covered. For me, those two things give me enough comfort to take the risk on the deal. So it's like, I don't recommend if you just started doing this in the last year to go and do that, right? That's not a good idea at all. But that's what that repetition and understanding gets you where, yeah, look, I put a budget in place and it's going to be wrong, right? I'm either going to be wrong to the good end or the bad end, but that happens no matter what. But for me, it was, okay, I don't necessarily need to know what they were doing, especially because utilities are all in the tenant's name. So that removed a pretty big variable. But that's just that level of understanding and that time, allows you to do that. And one of the biggest factors for me was the story behind it. It was this couple that had owned it for 40 something years now, 30, 40 something years. They bought it from the original developer And it was like that story, and there's more behind it, was what was so compelling to me. And it's funny because, John, I still remember like back in that tiny little office when I first started, like that's one of the first conversations we had. And it was like this weird concept to me that like I didn't really get it. And I can still picture the tiny little like picnic, not what, like the table.
Like it was a folding
family parties, like
but at the end of the desk.
That was my desk. And I just imagined sitting there with my laptop and like having that conversation. And it's just funny because it was like one of the first things we spoke about. And I just, I believe it wholeheartedly. So I think it's just funny.
Yeah, no, it's so accurate. I mean, it's never perfect. And that same story I just had with someone said, I have so many foreign investors and we're looking for 7 caps in Florida. I'm like, yeah, okay, my friend. You
3 years too late.
Yeah, I was like, you find that deal and you don't need your foreign investors, right? I will have anyone write a check for that. And the backup on that was they want trophy assets. I'm like, stop. I said, You're going down a path where you are never going to transact. And I typically never tell people never, but my exact words were, you can stop doing any work that you've done because you will never find a 7 cap trophy asset in this country for the foreseeable future.
Unless it's in like a podunk town in Georgia that's like 4 miles away. And it's like, why did you build this here?
Exactly. Unless you're in, there's a 50-person town 8 miles off the dirt road and there's nobody there. Yeah, that could be a trophy asset for that town. But I had that conversation because, we had a call and he said, we're 7 cap buyers. I'm like, okay, great. I think this call's over.
Yeah, that's the hardest point. I think when people are starting off, to your point, Chris, on underwriting, is that people nitpick the small stuff. So like when I see like a handwritten T12 or like a 1-pager, I'm like, for me, that's like opportunity. They're not great at reporting. It's not good. I'm not going to nitpick the questions for that. And I'm not going to really look at that paper. I'm just going to make sure if rents are good. So if you like see that and you're like, oh man, that's opportunity. You just have to do your homework and pretty much build it yourself because you're starting from scratch. The cap rates don't matter on those. And I know when I was underwriting, it's like, wait, well, you got to start somewhere. It's like, well, if it's a value add deal, the going in cap rate could be 1. Like, who cares? Because you're going to add so much value. Like the NOI that they have is garbage, right? So if you're adding a tremendous value, you're injecting income, you're renovating it. So it's kind of like bucketing it of like, if it is a stabilized deal, then the going in cap rate matters. But if it's a heavy value add, who cares? It's where can you get to? And I struggle with it today. Like I'm not the best at like, projecting refis because it's, a crystal ball and you try to assess it, but it's like, I don't know what the hell is going to happen in 3 years. I mean, who would have thought valuations go up 30% and interest rates are 0, right? Or going up, ticking up. So it's just like, you don't know, but it's, you build upon it and don't get frustrated because you'll get a good deal at the end of that tunnel and just keep going.
Yep.
Yeah. I love the interest rate talk. Everybody's like, oh, I know where it's going to be. Cause I remember when I first started, in 2016, interest rates were ticking up. They were going like from 4 to like the 5s. And we placed 10-year debt and we were like, wow, this is going to be a great sale in like 3 to 4 years because it's going to be a loan assumption. So, interest rates are going to go to 5 or 6. Someone can have a 4% loan. It's going to be great. It was like that for a little while. Then it came back down and we were like, damn, I guess we're holding this. Then in like, what was it? In 2019, it was like Fannie and Freddie placed so much debt. They like hit their limits and then spreads started going up. So it was like interest rates started ticking up again. And it went from like, low 4s up to like the 5s again. And then COVID hits and it fucking plummets into like the low 3s. And everyone's, rates are going to stay so low for so many years. And it's like now rates are ticking from like the 3s up to the high 4s again. So it's like, I don't know. I just hear people talk about where interest rates are going and what they're going to be. And I think everybody's just fooling themselves.
I've never, since I started doing this, tried to pretend. Internally, we have the conversations, right? Chris knows that, this will be a good loan assumption candidate, right? Rates have to go up. I've been saying rates have to go up for 6 years, but it's crazy. So, what we've learned is, put the right debt on something. Don't assume what's going to happen in the future, because none of us know. I mean, talking to a broker yesterday, he's telling me what's going on in a market that we are very familiar with. And his words to me were, you're probably just too educated to buy these properties because you know too much. And I'm like, think about that logically. I just know too much about a specific situation that you're basically telling me, my $60,000 an offer is accurate. Meanwhile, the property's in contract into the 90s. And you're like, that's a huge margin. He's like, and they're putting in 30, 40 a door. And I just scratch my head like, okay, well, what's that deal worth on the tail end? And I don't want to project it. I just know that it didn't work for us. But it's crazy when you think, you're right. How do I know what's going to happen in 3, 5, 10 years, right? Because I bet 3 years ago, no one predicted a pandemic. No one had that on the radar. So you're just going to do what you can do today and model it for today. And you could put projections in, but you're right. When you see things like paper T12s, stuff like that, verify your income, make sure your income's there. And then if you're familiar and you've underwrote 1,000 deals and you've done it for 2 years, you'll have a good idea what expenses should be. And you paint that picture going forward. But that's where you see opportunity. So, I mean, I love what you guys both said, because that's the important part about underwriting, going through that process for 3, 4 years or 2 years. And now saying, okay, I don't really care about that stuff. I care about how I can run it. And an asset manager would know that great. And are the rents there and are the comps there? Does it support what I'm looking to do?
Real quick, John, I sort of, a broker, I gave like a verb. I'm like, hey, this isn't for us. And he goes, well, if you find a deal like that, you call me and I will invest with you. And I'm like, and he's like, always, he was a monotone broker. So I was like, oh, he's like fucking with me. So I was like, fuck, that sucks. That licking the wounds. But it's just like as from the broker side, it's Bitcoin straight up to the moon. Like, don't worry about it. John, you're worrying, man. But for brokers, it's great. For us, it's as ethical stewards of people's capital. It's tough to go, not you get all the deals, but like you said, we have to do stuff that we never thought we'd have to do. Like I'm cold calling owners and, all this stuff. So it's like, you have to do stuff that no one else is willing to do to get a deal.
That's the golden nugget right there. Right. I used to tell people when I was in finance, and even when I was a real estate broker, just remember, when you stop calling, someone's going to make that next call, and that's going to be the deal. So if you take that mindset of how can we be different, whether it's direct mail, cold calling, knocking on doors, I don't care, but be different, right? We've thought about like high quality valued leads, what kind of gifts can we send these people? So like we just appear different if they decide to sell, but you just got to try different things. And, we do things today, and we've actually been investing money over the last, since December, really. Thank you, Chris, for leaving. Now we have to pay more money, but we've been putting in a good amount of money to resources that we never thought we would have to try and shake free some deals. And we had a call the other day basically saying, is it going to work or not? But we're not going to budge on what we want to deliver. So if the deal's not perfect, we're not going to budge. And it might cost a couple extra dollars to get there and a couple extra ideas and thoughts, but you got to do something different. If you do everything that someone else has written a book and you just think following that's going to get you that deal, it may, but take that and then build the story around what can I do differently, or how can I change this, or what models can I use?
Make it your own.
Yes, exactly. You have to be a little bit different, because, Chris and I have a podcast. We're not the only ones, right? We're telling people how to do things, but we're also doing it. But we're also trying other things. So be different, be creative. If someone looks at you like, what the fuck are you talking about? Do whatever you just said that you mentioned, because you want that reaction, because that reaction is going to make you stand out in a crowd.
But don't be a doomsdayer, because no one likes that guy.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah,
I'm typically talking about, the world's ending and it's never going to work. But that's not how I feel, behind closed doors. I'm trying to make things happen, which I think everybody should.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's when I was here. I was talking with this guy, Obi, who does a lot of stuff locally. We were just sitting down and chatting. And he's like, I was talking about doing like wholesaling and mailers and cold calling. He's like, dude, don't do mailers. He's like, don't try to, flip single family. Don't do mailers. He's like, there's a million people that are doing that stuff. He's like, even if you target, 2 to 10 unit properties to do it for, or even, higher, he's like, dude, everybody's doing it. He's like, there's a million brokers. There's, a million plus people doing single family. He's like, honestly, I think your best bet is just networking a ton with people and just letting them know what you're looking to do, and then trying to get creative in other ways. And I sat there and thought about it. I was like, yeah, because you think about all the people that are getting into it. What do? Right? They do a wholesaling course. They sign up for some mailers. They send, it's like the same blueprint for a mailer. They all look the same, right? It's all similar postcard, similar font, similar style. And even if you change it up slightly, it's still the same concept. And it's just like, you get a million in one of those. It was funny. The deals I just bought have like this loose HOA on them. There's no common areas. So really they just like pick up trash, make sure nobody like messes up and like mows the lawn, and they just upkeep. There's like this little area with a sign. That's all they do. And the one guy that's literally there, this older guy who's owned one building for ages, we're talking, he literally said in the meeting, he's like, yeah, I get a million of those postcards that said, we'll buy your house cash as it. And he's like, I just throw them out. He's like, I don't ever look at them. And it's like, how are you setting yourself apart when everybody's literally sending the same thing to the same guy at the same address for 20 years, 15 years, 10 years? Like, I don't know. And I just started when he said that to me, and then I literally sat there looking at a guy who owns a property that I would basically be sending a mailer to, and looking him in the face. And he says, and I said, oh, okay, well, I wasted, $3,000 basically, like I just threw that money in the trash. Right. And I just think it was pretty visceral. So yeah, I think it's interesting. I think there's got to be a way to set yourself apart and do it differently. And I think one thing that nobody's really doing right now that I'm thinking about, and, maybe going to be more of, just like being like more specific and trying to like really target things that I would definitely buy, instead of just like spitballing out a ton of stuff and hoping that stuff hits my net, and just like really getting granular on criteria and being like, hey, these are the 20 deals I'm going to target for the next 12 months, and really, try to get in touch with them, build rapport, do something else, and not try to target, 2,000 deals and spend no time on them. Don't know if it's going to work, but
because you can, I did a wide net texting campaign, and then this guy goes, it's a smaller unit, so it won't be institutional. But he's like, my dad died, I'm managing it. I saw it on apartments.com. It was like, yeah, call me after this time, because he's working. And I was like, I told myself, I'm buying this property, but it allows you to go longer and spend more on that and go deeper on that relationship. And I think too, it differentiates, you're in it, right? You're not just some kid calling for someone else. Like, hey, I own these things. I totally understand. Because then you can add value. Like, hey, if you need an accountant, you need this, you need that, I'm here to help you. Because then that your horizon is much longer than I got to do a transaction so I can make money, so I can leave my W-2. Like, how many times you're like, talk to someone like, I will do anything to leave my W-2 if I can get 0.1% of the act fee, I'm set for life. And it's like, that's not at all how this works. Like, you grind to make a little bit of money. And then if you sell it, you got to, great, now you have to do all that work again and compound and compound and compound. And I think there's just so many people who are like, I can flip apartments and make I'm done. I made it 3 flips and I'm out. And it's like, no, you own so little on a syndicated deal. But you get to say on Instagram that you have hundreds of units under management, that you own like 0.1%. It's like, congrats. But I think it's just like you said, make it your own. You being an operator and having that, like, you can go just really deep in conversations and just like help people and just be organic in you and just help. And that's the best way, because you're building that relationship throughout.
Yeah, I told John the story. I don't know if I ever mentioned to you. It was funny and scary. I was blind shopping this deal when we were buying that the other deal I was talking about for Toro, the one that I really liked. And when I go blind shop deals, I always tell them I like do something in real estate. A lot of times I'll say like I'm a flipper or something. So that way, if I ask a question like, oh, what type of, flooring are you using, or what type of this, I can like ask a little bit more questions, and they're not like, who the fuck is this guy? So anyway, I'm like going through these units. She's showing me all this stuff. I'm asking questions. We get back to the office. She's like, oh, so, you flip, blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah. And she's like, people are now starting to flip multifamily. And I'm like, oh God, where's this going? And I was like, no way. Tell me more. And she's like, yeah, the guy that owns this building, he's going to flip it. And I was like, oh my God, this is a 200 unit property. Like, this is not a, small thing. He's like, yeah, he buys multifamily and he flips them. And I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. I'd never heard of that. She's like, yeah. And there's actually this course here in Jacksonville that'll teach you how to do it. You should go check it out. And I was like, oh my God, I'm sitting there thinking, I actually know what the hell is going on. And this woman's telling random people that, these properties get flipped and that you can do it too. And I'm like, I don't, nobody take this the wrong way, but I'm like, God, if that's what people are hearing, I'm like, that's sometimes the expectations people are coming in with, and it's just totally messed up.
That's where I hate bigger pockets, where it's like, I did this and everything worked out, and it's like, cool. That's not at all how it happens.
I say it all the time. You have a business plan A to Z. It doesn't go A to Z. It
maybe gets to C, and then you close, and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, then the wheels come off the bus immediately. And it was funny. I was talking to one of our investors last night. We had that exact same conversation. Just what happened was 7 years ago, 10 years ago, there was coaches and gurus, and there's always been. But it's like now all the students have graduated, and now for every coach, they all had hundreds of students. Now each one of those students are coaches, but they've never experienced anything, right? They experienced the post on Bigger Pockets, and then they created a coaching platform, and they don't know what it's like on the other side of the coin. And I'm not saying that I do, Chris does, or you do. And maybe we do, maybe we don't. I'll leave the audience to decide that. But the problem is that they've taught so many things to people that have just driven returns and expectations and presentations wrong, fueled by, the part-time dad, stay-at-home father, part-time mom that is now the owner of 6,000 apartment units on Instagram. And more people think that they can flip an apartment complex, or we've bought deals and sold them inside of 12 months. And I'm not saying it's not possible, but you realize that the mechanisms and the things that actually have to go right, like you said, I could buy one deal, get an acquisition fee, and I can go live on the beach. Yeah, good luck. Because when the deal's short capital and it goes completely fucking sideways, you don't get an acquisition fee. It doesn't work that way. So it's just funny when you hear stories like that and you see things happening and you see a post and you're like, wait a second, you're the owner of that property? Well, I actually own the property. You're just an investor or something. So people craft stories, and just digging through that and understanding that will really put you in a platform to make the right educated decision. And the education out there is fucking horrible. So people really don't know what they're talking about, or they don't understand IRRs and cash flows and what these deals actually make, and the risk associated with added preferred returns and all that shit. So I think that there's just a lot of lack of education, and not education teaching people why financially engineering a deal may or may not work.
Yeah. And working for the education, being a coach for it, I tell people, because there's a lot of people, I go, this course will make you a better passive investor, right? Don't feel like you have to be a GP on a deal, because I've had some student calls and they've invested passively, and they're like, I'm ready to be a GP. And I go, are you ready to get that call at 3 a.m. to fix the sink? Are you ready to get that call that AT&T's satellite burned down and now there's no service? The amount, you could be a professional LP, and that's okay, because you don't have to deal with calls. You get to hop on the phone with me, Chris, and John once a month, whenever you want, right? So it's just it allows you, it's okay to be passive. Don't do it for Instagram. Just quietly, wealth creation is really boring. You get to do cool stuff, but it should be boring. It's not like crypto. It's not the GameStop. It's not AMC. It's not the Reddit squeeze. It is a very boring, very long process. And so kind of the beginning, to kind of tie it all back, it's like the deal. The story has to check out of the person operating it as well.
100%.
Yeah. No, I think all that stuff's interesting. I'm curious though, Mike, with you guys being vertically integrated and you doing the coaching, talking to a lot of people, doing some deals of syndication, doing some deals in-house, doing smaller deals, doing bigger deals. Do you guys think you see things differently than a lot of other people, or, that I think is more mainstream that you would like to change, or you think should be more well-known?
I think for people, like, grow responsibly. And that's like with any business, that even with like the CPA side, is just like grow. Like, if you can partner with someone, like, I mean, like Chris, it's not like out of the gate, you're like, I'm going to do 300 units in Jacksonville tomorrow. It's like, no, I'm going to buy these and just build a plan. I think people are just, Naval Ravikant on his tweet storm is like, people are doing stuff for ego, but just do it very methodically, right? Like, start with a 4, then an 8, then a 12. Like, it's slow and boring and you might have more headaches, but that operational advice that you have to see, you can apply it to bigger deals, because you're like, I can know how much it takes to turn one because I had to do it. Now I can incrementally build upon that, expand on it, and outsource. So I think the biggest thing is grow responsibly. And I think too, everyone, if you don't know what the SEC 506B or 506C, read that and talk to a syndication attorney before publishing deals, because I just see, I'm sure you guys too, of, I got this deal under contract, let me know. And then the first comment, like, is it a 506B or a 506C? And everyone's like, what's that? And we're like, oh my gosh, it's like dead before it even starts. So it's not like single family, at least, but growers, start small. It's okay, and grow. And then if you want to go bigger, talk to lawyers, because they're your friends.
100%. Yeah. I had somebody reach out to me, just talking about like partnering and co-GPing. And, I was just telling him, and like, my 10-year plan is to get to 500 million under management. He's like, we'll get there in 4 years. And I was like, I don't want to get there in 4 years. I was like, that's going to be a disaster if I get there in 4 years. I was like, 4 years is not enough time to learn, make mistakes, fix mistakes, like build up the systems and teams to manage that amount of stuff. I was like, the only possible way is if, I brought in like actual partners on my side where like they have the property management experience, so they have the construction management experience. I was like, that would be the biggest clusterfuck of all time. And I'd be working 80 hours a week and stressed to the gills. So like, I'd rather get there in 10 or even 20 years and feel comfortable and confident than, just rush to get, assets under management. Like, I even I've started hating that as like my 10-year goal of like putting a number on it, but it's just more of a easy thing to say to like build to the other things I really care about. Like, it's more of like having, X amount of employees and, building a team and doing that stuff. It's just more of like a mark that I know will allow me to accomplish those other things.
But the fact that you have a 10-year vision speaks volumes compared to any other investor that's like getting started, right? Everyone's like, I want to be done with my W-2, but no one wants that 10-year. And the fact that like I have a number as well, but it, like, my first deal I kept writing for 6 months is, I'm going to do a $5 million deal. And then like 6 months later, like Rand called me, joined the team. And like the first month we got a $10 million deal under contract. Do I own a huge portion of it? No, but it's just like, it's amazing. Just if you plant that seed and go with it, you might exceed it much shorter, but you have that vision that I think not many investors, like the thesis, the vision, right, that not many people have. So I think that speaks volumes to you and what you guys are doing.
Yeah. I mean, big part of it too is, working backwards. It wasn't like I just plucked a number out of the sky and said, oh, we'll get there in 10 years and we'll figure it out. It was also looking at like, okay, to get there, what do I have to do inside of, 7 years, inside of 5 years, inside of 3 years, inside of 1 year? And like, to John's point, right? Like, you put shit on paper and it's going to be wrong, right? Like, my 1 year goal or plan, like, it's wrong. Like, I didn't think I would buy a second deal so quickly. So in that case, it was a good thing, right? Like, I thought it would take me longer, but it's like, I may have thought, all right, like, I forget what it is. I have to go back and look, but like, if my 1 year was to get to 100 units, right? Well, I'm not going to rush. I'm not going to buy deals just to get there. Like, sometimes you go months and months and months without finding something that makes sense. Or sometimes, we used to joke all the time at Toro. It was like, we would go months, we probably average like 3 to 5 deals a year. And it was like, we would go months and then all of a sudden like 2 or 3 would hit at the same time. It's like, why the fuck couldn't they just space themselves out evenly? So it was like every quarter you'd do a deal or something like that, but it doesn't work that way. Right. So, I think that's why I'm somewhat hesitant, like, for that dollar amount at like 10 years or like units in 1 year. Like, I do it just as like a high level goal. But if I only get to 300 in 10 years, if I feel I did everything, to my best effort or that I'm comfortable with, I'm not going to sit there and be like, I failed. It's just more of like a path and something to follow and work towards. And it's like, okay, like sometimes you just don't get there. And some of those things are out of your control and some of those things are in control. And who knows, maybe I get into 5 years and I'm like, screw this. I just want to be an LP in deals and I want to go, live on the beach and, do something else part-time or, just retire or whatever. And that's totally fine too. But, if you don't know where you're going or have that end goal in sight, you're just going to be meandering around. Like there's a really interesting study that I heard about, and I think it makes sense. It's like if you would drop people in a place with no like distinct markings and tell them, hey, walk in a straight line as possible. And what everybody does is they end up walking in a circle that's like 60 yards in diameter. And it's like, it was like everybody does it. And I'm loosely quoting it. So if it's slightly off, but the concept is the same. It's like without those markings, without that path, without something to follow, like you're just going to walk in a circle or you're going to meander around. You're not going to do it. So like you have to pick a path. And even if that path changes in the future, you still have to have something to follow.
I want to know the rabbit hole you got to that article.
I heard somebody talking about it.
It's in the book Clockwork by Mike.
Oh, is that where it is?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Then that's where it is. Yeah. Because I just finished reading that like 2 weeks ago.
I forgot whose like original principle it is, but he talks about that specifically. The only reason I just reread the book and literally
really good book. Love
yesterday. It's great. I mean, it's the same guy that wrote Profit First, and I think he's just a good author. Mm-hmm. He's also a good narrator if you do audiobooks. So he writes the books and narrates himself, which is nice. It's not just someone else. But yes, that's the purpose of goals and visions, right? You want it to be obtainable and you want measures, but if you don't, you sort of just go through it. And next thing you know, you look back 10 years, you say, I just wasted fucking 10 years of my life because you never achieve it. So you're better off throwing a stupid goal out there, $1 billion, and failing miserably and getting to like 100 million than you are by just day by day different things. Because you don't realize it goes back to what we started with. Next thing you know, you look at the calendar and it's December. So yeah, no, it's someone else's principle that he talks about, but that happens with it's a ridiculous amount of entrepreneurs that just spin in circles because they never really obtain what they can potentially obtain. Because as human beings, we are so powerful. Like your mind and your actions are so powerful. And if you just put it to use and focus, you'll basically do any fucking thing you want to do. And that's what those goals are supposed to be. So you're not just going in circles, running in place. Because you can't control how many units you buy, pending you just want to throw money in the garbage, or how much money under management. Those are out of control because it takes two to tango. You need a reciprocal seller to sell. All you can do is put the effort in to achieve that. And that's what those things are supposed to be. So if anyone's wondering, I don't know the rabbit hole Chris went on, but if you do listen to Clockwork or read Clockwork or listen or read it, it's in there and it goes into more detail, but it is so true because it's happened, right? I think Chris, when he started working for us, we had a board with what we were trying to hit. When I had that written, we got there. Mm-hmm. If I don't have it written, you sit here and you just whittle through things and you don't dive in.
You go through the motions, right? And that's like the biggest thing is like, to your point, like when I was an accountant, I was like 260. I'm 6 foot. I was 260. And I was like, I'll never forget the Gary Vee video. He's like, you're going to die. And I was like, I'm having chest pain at 23. Like, this isn't going to go well. So I'm like, fuck, I'm really going to die if I don't get my shit together. And so that's where I was like, what do I want out of life? And it's like, okay, I want to do, that's where I was like, kind of just all clicked to like, all right, I've seen these startups. I could do this. So then it's like, okay, well, what rooms do I have to be in? Like I was playing, I never played high school basketball, middle school basketball. I was like, I'm gonna play basketball every morning to get, and I was terrible. And then by the end, like before I left Dan Gilbert's team, people were like, I can hit shots from 2 spots. And I was always like the second or third pick. Cause I'm like, I will hit the shot no matter what, covered or not. I'm hitting the threes from the 2 corners of the wing and it just worked. So it's just like, you build that goal and build up to it and just, like you said, anything is possible. And as cliche as it is, like just take over the world one day at a time.
100%. I think that's a fantastic place to wrap up, actually. Mike, thank you so much for coming on. I think people are going to get a ton of value from this once they've listened. If people want to get in touch with you, learn more about you, follow you, where can they do all that?
Yeah, so change the handle to Value Add Mike on, I think, every social media platform out there. LinkedIn, Mike Taravella, and then my email is miket@randcre.com. But happy to help in your journey. And, if you're listening to this podcast consistently, you're doing all the right things, just take action. That's the biggest thing.
100%. Guys, definitely go hit him up. Go follow him. Great resource, great person. Really happy we had him on. But thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. If you're not already subscribed, it would mean the world to John and I if you would do so. And if you are, please send it to someone that would get a tremendous amount of value from this episode. Mike, once again, thank you so much for coming on. This is awesome.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.